Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to our /entitled people, where people truly believe they can do no wrong and can have what they want. And in today's episode, guys, holy moly, you're in for a treat. A psycho Karen family does something so outrageous, guys. They burn down a building when they don't get what they want. Guys, the stories today are wild. I hope you enjoy them. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So this happened last night, and because of it, I've gotten very little sleep. So I may or may not get into more of a rant in some places. So for some context, my father is one of the most entitled people I know. And on top of that, he's lazy. Over the years, he's demanded my personal things, such as my $1,000 bike. And everywhere we go shopping, my father doesn't understand what closing means. My dad will literally go inside 5 minutes before closing and prevent staff from going home until he gets what he wants. With that said, flashback to 3 a.m. I'm asleep in my room, and suddenly, my cat comes sprinting into the room and knocks a ton of things over, causing me to wake up. I'm up and immediately smell smoke, and I'm very confused, but I don't panic because, unsurprisingly, my father's burnt food at 3 a.m. before, so I just assume that's what happened, and that he took care of it. Well, not this time though, because when I sit up and put my glasses on, I can see that the smoke in the house is obvious. It's so thick that I know something is very, very wrong. So I rush out to the kitchen, and sure enough, I see a sauce pot billowing smoke like a smokestack. I immediately shut off the burner and turn on the stove fan, and then wake up my father, yelling how he left an effing pan on the burner. And then I start opening windows. All of them were shut since it's below 60 where I live. My father immediately starts cursing at me for waking him up, and when I ask him if he's gonna help me air out the house, he says I need to do it myself. Meanwhile, he gets up and he goes to take a 20-minute dump in the bathroom, which meant I was down to one exhaust fan. Like, this effing idiot almost burns down the house and then immediately refuses to help. The conversation with my dad and my screaming was enough to wake up my mom, and she runs out of her room panicking because of the smoke in the air. I explain the situation, and she starts to yell at my father, who claims it wasn't his fault, because he had meant to come back to the soup, he just fell asleep by accident. As these two are having an argument, I start busting out the window fans, turning them to face outwards to get all the smoke out of the house. My mom eventually starts to help, and all the arguing had awoken my brother, who was asleep. He didn't notice the smoke since his door was shut, and he had his massive windows wide open. So at this point, we're all pissed, and my brother works first shift, so he gets to miss out on an hour of sleep basically. While this is going on, my father's still in the bathroom, refusing to help anyone because he's a piece of crap, and the family cats are freaking out. So we're trying to get all these windows open and the fans in them, while cats are sprinting between potential exits, all while my father gets to hide from his mistakes. We then get all the fans blowing, and me and my mom sit down in the living room, both with headaches from the smoke. Now, that brings us to the next point. If at this point in the story, you're wondering why no smoke detectors went off, potentially saving us from having to do all this, well then don't worry, my stupid father has the answer. You see, we were wondering the same thing. Why the heck did no smoke detectors go off? Our smoke detectors are wired into the house's electrical with a battery backup in case of power outages, so there's no way they should not have been working. So I go and twist one off the ceiling, and I notice the smoke detector was switched off. I then run to the others in the house, and they're all switched off as well. My mother and I go back and forth discussing why they were shut off. That's when my father comes out. He then says in a voice so matter-of-fact that it was almost like he wasn't just responsible for nearly burning down our house less than 30 minutes ago. Oh, I actually shut them off when I made steak in the skillet because the smoke kept causing them to go off. Hearing that, we were all speechless. This dumb mother effer actually shut off the smoke detectors, and he didn't turn them back on when he was done. This dumb, grown man nearly started a fire in a trailer. Now, I don't know what you may know about trailer homes, but they're built out of super flammable and cheap materials. So a fire in a trailer is like lighting a firecracker. And the thing is, usually what my dad does is at least funny in hindsight, but this time, he literally almost effing killed us. If not from fire, then from the potential smoke inhalation. And the man just sits there like a child, doing nothing. Honestly, I'm still pissed because I couldn't sleep for hours and the house still smells like smoke. Okay, so I'm upset, and I'm just reading this post. Like, I feel so bad for what OP, mom, and brother had to go through. And for dad to just sit on the toilet and not help is absolutely ridiculous. Like, what are you doing, sir? Like, I couldn't imagine being responsible for the house almost being burnt down and then acting like a complete a-hole over it. Like, what in the world? And honestly, OP and family were lucky it was just a smoking pot because that could have ended horribly. All thanks to dad turning off the smoke detectors. Oh, I'm still shaking my head at this post. Okay, so many years ago, I worked in a group home. This happened in the year 2000, and it was a lot more traumatic than it sounds, and I don't like to talk about it much. For the privacy of all residents in the group home, we had a set visitation room, with visitation hours by appointment only. It was appointment only, so that two families weren't trying to visit at the same time, as the house wasn't that big. The visitation room had a separate entrance, and a door that shut it off from the rest of the house. It had a half bath, a TV, cable hookup, gaming console, DVD player, board and card games, along with nice comfy seating and a small 4-person table. Visitors were not allowed anywhere but that room if any other residents were home. It didn't matter if Bill wanted to show off his new bedding sets or if Jack's mom wanted to see if he needed new clothes. If other residents were home, that's a big no. The families of the 5 residents were fine with it. However, one resident named Kyle was another story. His mother and grandmother were not fine with it. They firmly believed that they were well within their rights to enter the rest of the house and inspect it and his housemates. He was their baby, and they had rights by God. Actually, no. The residents of this home were 30 to 40-year-old men with developmental and physical disabilities. They were all actually wards of the state. The fact that they were even allowed to know where he was, let alone visit, was a huge privilege. Our agency had many other homes where the families of the residents had no idea where they were, and they weren't allowed to see them. The families were only allowed to contact the case manager and inquire about them. So back to Kyle's mom and grandma. It was a constant battle to keep them out of the rest of the house. It got to the point that we had to have an extra staff member during their visits, as they would try to wander off and snoop around the house. The extra staff member had to sit outside the connection door while the visits were going on, and physically stand blocking their way when they would attempt to enter. I lost track of how many times we ended up calling the police to have them removed from the main part of the house before that happened. And that's when they started calling the police on us. So after the 3rd time of them calling the police to demand entrance to the rest of the house, they lost their privilege of visiting. Kyle was then moved to another home where they weren't allowed to know the address. As you can guess, this did not go over well, to put it nicely. They were adamant that Kyle was still in our home, that we were essentially hiding him from them, and they threatened us several times with lawsuits and more police, and said that we would pay for keeping their baby from them. A restraining order was granted against them, keeping them 800 feet from the house, staff, residents, and no calls to the house. It all came to a head one night around midnight. I was locking up the house for the night. All the windows and doors had to be checked and the alarm set. Another staff was doing bedtime medicine. The other 2 were helping out with bedtime routines and getting laundry going. I kept telling the other staff that I smelled smoke, like a campfire, just faint whiffs of it, and they said I was crazy. I had just walked the entire house and nothing was burning. I thought to myself, it must be a neighbor having a small backyard fire or something, and I probably just got a whiff of it while closing the windows, and it was still stuck in my nose. Not too long after that, the smoke smell was finally strong enough for the others to smell. So in pairs, we split up and we checked the house again. We found nothing, but the smell's getting stronger and stronger by the minute. We met back in the living room, and that's when we decided to call the fire department when we realized that we could see smoke in the living room. We immediately woke the residents and we had them put on shoes and jackets. The smoke in the living room was now clearly visible, and it was starting to make its way towards the bedrooms, and it triggered the fire alarms. Finally. The protocol was to evacuate and get the residents to the van. The living room was the exact center of the house, with an open floor plan, with the kitchen on one side and the laundry room on the other. Down the hall, we shuffled to our office because the van was parked to that side and the keys were in the office. As we come around the corner of the house, we see the source of the smoke. Our front porch was on fire. The house was brick, which is what was preventing it from spreading outwards, but it was spreading upwards towards the roof. The police and fire departments arrived just as we reached the van. The fire department went to work on the house, and the police head towards us. We were all fine, except 4 people came running up to us. It was Kyle's mother and grandmother, along with 2 unknown men. The 2 women start screaming for Kyle and that they were here to rescue him, that we had endangered him by allowing him to live in that fire trap. They suddenly realized that there was no Kyle in the group, and they were now screaming that we had left him in the house on purpose for him to burn. Cue the hysterical crying, screaming, saying that they were suing us, that they would shut us down and have us all jailed for murder. The police quickly asked if we had left someone behind, to which we answered no. We have all 6 men, but for their safety, we had to get them in the van and then we would sort this out. At this point, Kyle's mom and grandmother were trying to get to me and the staff, probably to do harm, but the police held mother and grandmother back while they continued to shriek about Kyle and that we had left him to die. 2 of the staff loaded them while me and my coworker talked to police, starting with the fact that these 2 women had a restraining order, and for his safety and ours, Kyle had been moved to a location unknown to them. Hearing that, they were cuffed immediately and told to pipe down. We then proceeded to explain what had transpired that evening. The fire was doused quickly while we did this. One of the firemen then came over to talk to the officers, and we heard him say that there was evidence that this fire was set deliberately, that there would be a formal investigation. In the end, Kyle's mother and grandmother were arrested for violating the restraining order and suspicion of arson. The 2 men were also arrested on suspicion of arson. The results of the investigation determined a clear case of arson. There was also a deliberate rigging of a device to the door leading out to the visitation room that would have been fatal to the person opening the door, and if anyone was close by, debilitating, if not fatal. The 4 were indicted on vandalism, arson, 8 accounts of attempted homicide, and 2 counts of attempted murder. It came out that they were unaware of the side door, which saved lives. They got a plea deal, and they got 7 to 10 years each. Wow guys, so I thought the last post I read, where Karen tried to set fire to a building, was wild, but oh boy, this one. Like, it's not quite as intense as the other story, but it's pretty up there. Like, I have no idea what the 4 were thinking. Like, seriously, if the mother and grandmother were convinced that Kyle, their precious baby, was still in the house, you'd think the last thing they'd want to do is to scorch the place, putting Kyle in danger, right? And really, this post is a prime example of how screwed up some people can be. Like, I don't know how the 4 of them all sat down, and in the end they agreed, oh yeah, let's just set the place on fire, that'll teach them. So I've worked as a freelance cosmetologist for 5 years now. I love my job, and I can't imagine doing anything else. However, when I first started, I didn't think that way. One of my first clients was a young, spoiled 17-year-old who lived in one of the richest neighborhoods in the city. At the time, I would usually do someone's makeup, either at their house or mine. During this particular time, a family friend allowed me to use her hair salon as a home base, since my family dog just had 6 puppies, and the house was chaotic. So for most freelancers, prom season equals money. I was no exception. On this day alone, I had 9 clients, most from the same school. That's when Karen walks in with her mom, and she greets me semi-politely. We already had a consultation to determine the time it would take, what kind of look she wanted, and pricing. So with that, Karen sits down in the salon chair. She crosses her legs with this annoyed sigh, and she begins texting on her phone. The mom then says that she'll be back in 30 minutes or so, since she didn't want to sit in the salon doing nothing. Everything was mostly fine until the end. Up until that point, she had not been cooperative, aka not wanting to get off her phone while I did her makeup. Normally, I talk to my clients while working. It tends to make things less awkward since I have to be so close to another person, and I'm literally touching their face at times. I also like to tell them what I'm doing so they don't get surprised when a black liner pencil comes towards their eye. When doing so, I always say what product I'm using. Karen did not pay attention the entire time until I start doing her lips. Now here's a quick note. Nothing against the brand, but I don't care for MAC products. I never have. I don't think the quality is worth the price. This is a fact that I told the girl up front. Now during the consultation, she again spent most of her time on her phone. Anyway, I start lining her lip with some lip liner. I forgot which one. She sat still, thankfully, until I pull out the lipstick, and that's when the hissy fit began. Karen basically says, "What's that?" I say to her, "Oh, it's some color by Urban Decay." She then screams at me and says, "Well, that's the wrong color." Now, the color I picked was the exact shade used in the reference picture. I did my research beforehand and found the reference picture on Urban Decay's website. I basically say to her, this is the exact color used in the reference picture. To which she says, no it's not, that is not MAC. Cue her mother entering. Her mom says, what seems to be wrong, sweetheart? Karen then says, this bitch is trying to do the wrong look on me. She's not even using the right lipstick. Her mom takes a look at her and says, but sweetheart, your makeup looks exactly like the picture. Karen says, no, she's not using the brand I want. She's supposed to be using MAC. Everyone uses MAC. Her mom then says, I know you like MAC, sweetheart, but she did say she didn't use MAC when we talked to her before. Cue the eye roll. And she says, fine, whatever. Going back to texting. So I finish her makeup, set it, and then turn her towards the mirror. The mother instantly lights up and she starts to praise my work. The girl, however, gets up, glares into the mirror, grabs her mom's hand, and then starts storming out of the salon with a final, I'm telling my friends to never use you, you hood rat. Now, I may not have lived in the nicest part of town, and I regularly was stopped by cops on my way home from school. But when I was working, I always looked professional. I then say, excuse me, but you haven't paid. I can't allow you to leave without paying. At this point, the husband owner walks in, heard me saying that, and he blocked the door. The daughter, after sighing and trying to get around the man, says, you don't deserve payment. In fact, you should pay me for sitting there while you did a terrible job. Like, what am I, your first time doing makeup? That's when her mom chimes in and says, sweetheart, we can't leave without paying her. Cue the let me speak to your manager screaming. The daughter loses it and says, you are not paying her. She's a stupid bitch who obviously doesn't know anything about makeup. I mean, look at this dump she's in. At this point, I was ready to let her leave since I could see the owner's hair clients getting bothered and annoyed. The owner and her husband were getting upset, and that's when the mother did something completely unexpected. She screams at her daughter and says, enough! All day, you've acted like an entitled brat. Not another word out of your mouth. First, you're going to apologize to her because she did a fantastic job, and then you're going to apologize to everyone else in here for your behavior. Daughter then apologizes begrudgingly, and mom says, now go sit in the car and give me your phone. She then turns to me and says, I'm sorry about that, dear. I hope the rest of your clients are not as rude as my daughter. She then proceeds to give me a $50 tip, doubling what I would have made off this appointment, and gave the owner $100 as an apology for disturbing her clients. To summarize, not every entitled brat falls close to the tree. Honestly, guys, I can't say I expected that. Way to go, mom, for putting her bratty daughter in her place, right? And really, with how sweet her mom sounded, I bet the daughter was hanging out with some entitled friends. And guys, I know nothing about makeup, but if the end result looks identical to the reference picture, do you really need to complain about brands? With all that said, this was one of OP's first clients 5 years ago. I hope her business is thriving now. I'm a 32-year-old female, and I got married 4 years ago. And my husband, 35, and his family are many times over millionaires. My family is middle class. Our wedding cost around $700,000, paid by him and his parents. My parents gave me a flat fee of $10,000 for a dress, which they're giving to my sister too. So my sister, who's 25 years old, and her fiance, 26, are lower class. She has $170,000 in debt, and him $110,000 in debt from student loans, along with $18,000 in medical debt and $35,000 credit card debt. Well, last night was my sister's birthday dinner, and she announced that she was engaged, and that she wanted help paying for her wedding. She then hands me a spreadsheet of how much she was going to need for her dream wedding, and it was ridiculous. The spreadsheet clearly outlined a dream wedding that was to cost $100,000. She then said to me that as her only sister, I need to step up and help pay for the wedding since our parents only gave her $10,000. She then said that she needs me to give her at least $70,000 because I'm rich, because I married wealthy. When I told her I'm not giving her $70,000, she cried and she said it's not fair that I get what I want. When she realized that I wasn't going to budge, she broke down, how I'm just using motherhood to be greedy and lazy. I have twins, 2 years old. I eventually told her that I wasn't going to be coerced into giving her $70,000. She's 15 weeks pregnant, hence why she's in a rush to be married right away. When I tried to leave, she just snapped, saying I'm a bad mother. My brother, who usually stays neutral, says I should forgive her since she's stressed from crippling debt, has 2 kids, and a third on the way. Her 8-year-old's dad doesn't pay child support, and her 4-year-old's dad pays almost nothing in child support. The families don't help either. She then claimed that I'm jealous of her since she's younger, and that since I'm over 30, my husband's probably cheating on me with the housekeeper since I'm never home. She also thinks that I should have let her and her family move into my condo, since it's a 3-bedroom, 6-bathroom. They live in a small 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. My husband is completely done with her. He said I can forgive her, but he won't. Our parents want to forget. So would I be the a-hole for not giving my sister the money? Guys, I can't even think of any reason why OP would be the a-hole for not giving her sister $70,000. And holy heck was that ever entitled. Like, I know it's her birthday, but handing out a spreadsheet outlining a $100,000 wedding, saying that people need to pitch is wild. And also, is anybody else wondering what the heck a $700,000 wedding is like? And this person's comment basically says it all. This person says, you are not the a-hole. And oh my, your sister is a hot mess. 3 baby daddies, lives in a shoebox with her parents, crippling education debt, crippling credit card debt, medical debt, yet she thinks she's entitled to a $100,000 wedding. She's so green with envy that she went all vomit mouth and spewed all over you. I'm with husband, call it a day and cut her off. Seriously, some of the things she said to you cannot be unsaid. Totally agree. But guys, let me know what you think. Who's giving their sister $70,000 for a wedding? Leave a comment down below. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled people episode, where a Karen family trespasses on OP's land and then yells at her when she tells them to get off. It's a wild story, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.